So, mixed bag again this week. First off with Lupat, Tooma is forced by the Monster of the Week to join a martial arts gym that is actually cover for an aerobics class. One which is later in the episode revealed to have very expensive tuition costs for the honor of doing all of this. The compulsion effect by the monster is being given off by its Lupin collection item. And I was like, dude, there is no way a Super Sentai-based artifact would actually have any type of magic brainwashing compulsion powers. And then it turns out that the artifact that is in the guy's safe is the Zeusoken, aka the Dragon Dagger, whose melody allows it to summon forth Dragon Caesar, aka the Dragon Zord. This is not an artifact which brainwashes or commands dedication. It's just a, I don't want to say control device, but a summoning trigger, which is then gives commands and orders because, well, Dragon Caesar has this kind of problem where it's not exactly the most sentient of the robots, so can't exactly operate on its own. But it's not a brainwashing or direct mind control thing. At least from my perspective on the greater thing about that specific series. Like, I never felt Zyuranger was guilty of that, so I don't feel that a mind control ability being relayed to it should have been something that I should have seen as a correlation. Regardless, Sakia is, for the most part, not under the sway of the monster, and, well, we're on Tooma's side, however, throughout this episode because, well, Sakia is really overbearing and can have that character trait end up being very annoying with how green he is. And, like, in this specific case, he insists on Tooma calling Sakia senpai because he never gets to be the senpai for anything, except to be the senpai, aka the upperclassman or the senior in a relationship, you kind of have to do this thing where you earn it. Like, there's a reason you do not normally see Kohai, aka underclassman or junior, has noticed me, which he completely reacts as when he finally makes Tooma call him senpai. It's like, it's a bigger issue of how wrong this character in his dealing with this all is. And Tooma, to his credits, it's like, oh my god, I have been him on so many occasions where this hyperactive guy is being annoying and harmful to one's well-being, and yet they don't see it because they're that much of a ditz. And I actually have one of those people at work right now that always speaks in high-pitched, shrill voices, and I've actually had to have management intervene on that because, as I've mentioned before in videos, I have very sensitive hearing, and one of the triggers for sound waves translating into immense pain for me is high-pitched points. And so I get that entire... I experience that daily at work in the same way Tooma is. So I am definitely on his side here in wanting Sakia to just shut up and get out of this situation. But the Gangler, with his use of this power, makes it so Tooma physically can't, and he can't talk about it to other people, both because he's reserved and because he's been brainwashed not to. He can't even get the others to help him out and escape from it. They have to eventually figure out on their own that something is wrong with Tooma, because with how Sakia acts, he's so unreliable that no one else can distinguish that there's actually a problem with him. Regardless, they eventually have to figure out something's wrong with Tooma and track it back to this guy after Tooma sees that the monster has used his power on Sakia to compulse him into taking a box with a bomb to the Central Police Agency. Thus, the monster itself would be scot-free, and Sakia himself would be blamed for it for, blowing up the police headquarters and bringing in a bomb because, he would have willingly done it. It doesn't matter if he was tricked, he was a compulsory agent on this without actually being compulsed into it. Another thing on that hearing thing, I am hearing the brats next door at the pool screaming their heads off, and so if you're seeing me flinching, that would be why. But on a similar tangent to this, it's like Tooma eventually has to put things in motion to make Sakia realize that he got scammed by this monster good, but it doesn't happen until they're in the midst of the monster fight, and Sakia is using all these new martial arts tricks that he seemed to have gotten into it to actually fight it off in Pat Kaiser, and they realize you just learned very basic aerobics. Those have no capability of helping in a fight. In fact, Pat Kaiser takes some damage because, well, the monster could easily manipulate that kind of thing into it getting cheap shots at it. And then it ends up being the worst thing. Tooma allowing Sakia to realize this is actually the worst thing for the monster's case, because then Sakia's all burning justice. I was tricked out of so much of my pay to actually make it so that Pat Kaiser takes on all of its special armaments for, I think, the first time, might be the second time if I'm misremembering this, and basically beat the thing into submission before finally destroying it. So, yeah, this episode could have so easily gone wrong, but I think worked because Tooma was being allowed visual cues about how much he hated this situation. Thus, you can empathize immensely with him, and then get a bit more vindication at Sakia realizes and then is fully on board in the Tooma angle of getting back at this monster. So, it has the proper schadenfreude and catharsis for the characters wronged in the episode for it to be pulled off. Other episodes, other series that have done this kind of episode end up doubling down and have the characters who suffer through this kind of thing be the butt monkey with the resolution. And admittedly, that happens a bit with Tooma, with Kairi and Umika making fun of him at the end for the aerobics dancing he had to go through, but it's more like well-natured jabbing at the ridiculousness of the situation and that Tooma was the one put in the middle of it, simply because Tooma is the super serious one that would be more sniping and snarky to when they screw up. So this is a bit of a back jab at him, but all meant in good fun, whereas other Sentai I've reviewed, other Sentai I've discussed in these vlogs, would just have it be a addition of insult to injury instead of, lighthearted fun meant by them. Admittedly, the lighthearted fun angle is what a lot of these other series try but fail at, because the character wronged never got comeuppance for it. So, again, it's just piling more of that crap on them instead of venting frustration, and Kairi and Umika at the end allowing him to more voice his frustration so he can get all of that out of his system and back to normal. So overall, this is so easily could have gone wrong, but it overall worked. My really only lingering thing was the Sakia angle with him subjugating Tooma more. I understand that that was supposed to be more of the point of helping build Tooma's frustrations against it, but it really does not. It's again the problem with the Patranger in this series, in that they are oblivious to the harm they can do or would do to others simply because they don't realize the connotations of their actions, or they don't realize in turn what was happening. But again, that is mediated by him actually realizing how badly he was getting scammed. Build, however, this seemed like a wasted episode. At the beginning of it, it's like, okay, I thought they were going to do this, but they didn't, so I was wrong about how Build was going to do this. But last episode, vlog, I was complaining about how Build has so much done the reveal a new form or transformation at the end of the episode, then quickly shove past it narratively to then get to the actual plot. Usually I find that is how you worst deal with introductions to new forms, powers, and abilities, and I'm thankful that Bill did not do that. The fight with Grease Blizzard was spaced out throughout the episode, leading to Kazumi's death, and he actually, while transformed, got a few more scenes with, I'm forgetting her normal name. Fuck. I only remember as Me-Tan now for some reason. Ugh. But yeah, he got a few more moments with Me-Tan about how he doesn't want to die, but is going to do his part on making sure Sento can save whoever's left after they beat Evolto, and in fact stabs the castle lost bottle into himself so he can purify it so it can be used in the White Pandora panel, and that is ultimately what causes him to finally die in the end. Not just him using Grease Blizzard, but just going beyond all limits to absorb all the nebula gas from these clone smash of his friends and everything else. It's actually really good all the way through with his part in things, and he earns his heroic death. Even some of the recognition he's always wanted from... See, I wish I was better with names so I wouldn't forget this, but she's been so little... She hasn't been relevant in a while to actually mention in all of this that I really can't... I'm only really remembering her nickname. It's strange. But yeah, with Me-Tan finally admitting that the big reason why she never called Kazumi by his name instead of just referring to him as Grease was because by the time she met him, she had already lost so many people close to her, and had just had the betrayal by her father that she didn't want to get close to anyone else, so if they died, she could dissociate herself from that death, not by forgetting them, but if she ever called them by their name, then the death or their loss would become more real, as it would be acknowledging how much, if she grew to appreciate their presence, would mean to her, how much the death would affect her, and so even with Kazumi dying, she's going to keep referring to him as Grease, because it's also her way of trying to keep the memory of him alive, as, again, calling him by his name would be to acknowledge his death. So, yeah, that works for me, and explains another aspect of the character and how she's acted so standoffishly to him all of this time, even though they have more factored into the amicable stuff, and, well, admittedly, the extreme otaku-ness could have been another reason why she kept at a distance to him, because, admittedly, that was creepy, but at least he dialed that back, so, you know, there was a lot more, of true friendish moments when looking back. What doesn't work as well is Utsumi. See, why do I remember his name and not Me-Tan's? It annoys me that this is how my brain works. As apparently he was trying to play a Volt, and much like Sento's father was, and it did not work. In fact, Evolt was expecting this betrayal to happen all along, while Utsumi was all in this to eventually get revenge for Namba's death because he was a Namba kid. But I don't get that. It doesn't fit with his prior characterization. Admittedly, in some ways it does, because the guy was a traitor to everyone. I mean, even the betraying the memory of Namba Jozaburo by siding with his killer, it fits how he kind of goes against everybody with time, and I don't feel the the faking a double-crossing of sides to getting close to the man he was actually trying to double-cross. He, as in Utsumi, I should clarify, hasn't had the time, presence, or proper characterization in the show to support such a twist. Admittedly, Mad Rogue being crazy, you kind of see it, but I don't feel it quite fits due to the lack of time and attention that was given to the character. Hell, something else we suddenly are we suddenly have revealed to us here, which has had no foreshadowing at all, is after he got shot in the early side of the series when he was pretending to be Night Rogue to defend Gentoku's identity as Night Rogue. Apparently that gunshot wound did so much damage to his body that he had to have his body extensively replaced with cybernetics. That doesn't work. That really does not work that way. It's like, you didn't have the damage needed to require that. Now, if you were in some type of explosion and lost pieces of your body, sure, if the cybernetics were required to revive you from death, as Bloodstark saved his life after that, and in fact, that's why him betraying Evolt doesn't make as much sense in hindsight, because you would think that with Evolt apparently treating him as, you know, something valued instead of Gentoku, who discarded him as a scapegoat, and Namba, who discarded him as a thoughtless pawn, it's like, Evolt was the one who placed value in him as an individual. Betraying him like this, after siding him on this, makes less sense, because Evolt valued him more as an individual than Namba did. That's why him switching sides before to become Mad Rogue made sense. So him betraying Evolt makes less sense because we haven't seen enough of the character, only hand-waved aspects of it, to really validate it. I really have a problem with Utsumi's heel face turn here, unlike the other ones where they fit better. But because of this, Rogue and Mad Rogue, okay, I see kind of the parallels they were going for, managed to defeat the Gear Brothers, who have also been cloned, or at least their abilities recreated, on top of other Lost Smash, so another of the unpurified bottles, or at least the bottles released from their true purification by Sento earlier with Build Genius, is reactivated. And the way they do it is interesting, because it ties back into the 7 Best Matches miniseries that previously debuted the Gear Brothers and the Hell Brothers forms after the suit designs were originally seen in Build's movie. And the trick to that is that Utsumi was originally using that miniseries as a means by which to get analysis data on all of the Seito and Hokuto full bottles to make the Gear Brothers immune to them. However, the final form that Sento used in that miniseries, the Shark Bike full bottles, the Same and Bike full bottles, which created a form that were actually specially released with that miniseries Blu-ray release, is or at least one of them was. I'm not sure. I'm not remembering off the top of my head if it was both of them or just one of them that was part of that. But regardless, Utsumi made it so that the Hell Brothers was actually weak to that full bottle, those full bottles, in the event that they ever needed to fight against it, or the Hell Brothers would turn on him themselves. Basically a defense against the chance that Namba would betray him in turn. Which, again, is why the big reveal of why Utsumi is doing this in the memory of Namba just doesn't quite make sense, because why would he have this defense against Namba going against him if Namba is the reason why he was even switching sides in the first place? It doesn't fit. It feels like it would have been better if he had woken up to everything that was happening here's a better one. Shinobu. If Shinobu was his inspiration to betray Evolt as well, as he saw how Evolt used and then discarded Shinobu when he ceased being useful or betrayed him. So seed him as the next disposable scientist for Evolt's own mad ambitions, and he would die otherwise. That would have worked far better than saying it was for this dead man that you already have this defense against to keep the old man from betraying him in turn. It's like, there are ways you could have fit this to work that were already available in your story, and you didn't really use them. The other aspect of this that doesn't really work is both of these deaths and Gentoku being severely injured ended up being unnecessary and worthless. Throughout the entire episode, Sento and Ryuga are continuing to climb Pandora's Tower, and yet at the end of the episode, when they finally reach the top, everyone else is there or in the process of recovery, meaning they went back and got these people, which were farther down, even though the episode kept showing them both in transformed and untransformed states throughout their climb up the tower, meaning they are just climbing and climbing and climbing. We don't see them ever fight anything else. We don't see them de-transform. They're suddenly in human state, in their normal civilian states, and in their powered up states, and there's no cognitive reason to why they didn't reach the top to stop Evolt yet. Even though, had they focused on Kazumi's battle, and then focused on Gentoku's battle, with Gentoku then being shoved up the tower, it gets the idea that these happened in such quick circumstances that Sento and Ryuga could not go back and help them, even though by the passage of time, it showed that they were more than capable of, especially with how they're all back together at the top of the complex. And outside, yeah, everything is devastated, everything is dead or heavily injured. It is at least 30 minutes since this assault have passed, if not more time, and we've seen throughout all of this that Evol's been keeping to his timetable of opening up a new black hole rift to devastate the areas and leave them wastelands after all the matter, or at least the majority of the tangible matter and people in them have been killed. So it's like, I can't even describe the ways they seem to have failed by splitting the party, because they split the party, people in the party died, and now they're all back together again, and it feels like there was no point to them dying, even though having them all together at the end would have given them a better chance. They could have just steamrolled the opposition they fought, and it's like, this compares poorly against when Kyoryuger did their splitting of the party. They split the party to succeed in saving people, and so the people who would be most capable of fighting the big bad could go and stop the big bad before he would be allowed to unleash his devastation, his win condition, essentially. Evolts is already at his win condition, or his win condition is being more facilitated by these characters splitting the party so that their full fighting potential is not being achieved, or subjugated, or lost, and then he just gets a piece back to his puzzle with the rest of them beaten and broken and demoralized by the losses they suffered, and they still lose by... It's like... I feel this doesn't work in the grand scheme. Too much... It feels more like these deaths are... like, Sento intentionally did this. Like, did he waste their time? And the easiest way to fix this would have been to show Sento and Ryuga getting stalled by facing other Smash, or the building orienting itself on its insides, because we know Evil does that. So he's intentionally delaying them so they can't get back to their friends to help save them and potentially prevent their deaths or grievous injury, or even so that the clock is run out and everything else is destroyed already by the time everyone else gets there. The way it's depicted in the episode makes it more seem like Sento and Ryuga failed when they had no need to. They lost these people when their goal was to save them without the need to actually sacrifice them in the first place. It really feels like Sento gave him the... left him with that lost bottle that was purified by his death intentionally, instead of like he was a fed sacrifice. That's why Sento gave him the blizzard knock in the first place, and that doesn't work. That's not a good reflection on his character to sacrifice someone else. It is a good thing for Kazumi's character that he would sacrifice of himself, because self-sacrifice is how you depict the needs of the many versus the needs of the few argument, as I said back with Ryuki. But someone instigating a situation where someone has no option but to make that choice is it does not make the character seem appealing at the end. So I have a lot of problems with this episode, and it's the third, fourth to last episode we're going to have with the show, and it really feels like Kazumi at the end died for nothing. Japan's mostly devastated. Evolt has his win condition back if he can get the lost bottles from Sento, Ryuga, and Kentoku, which, let's face it, he is going to if Sento's plan is to succeed. And Sento is looked upon poorly because he's acting like Takumi Katsuragi again, instead of the bringer of hope that Sento is supposed to act like. There's pragmatism, and then there's sacrificing members of the party. No, there's pragmatism, and then there's sacrificing people as pawns for unnecessary feints. I really hope that in the end, Sento figured out that all of the things that Evolt devours are being saved as some type of remnant data within him, so his big plan involves, freeing and restoring those people at the end. Kids outside again. As otherwise it feels... That's my end of the piece with him at the end, and if he doesn't do that, it feels like he sacrificed someone for nothing. And like I keep rapping back on that, but that's not that'll be a detriment to his character's depiction long term. So yeah, series is ending soon. Shinichiro Shirakura had an interview that got released through the Tokusatsu network that makes me even more cautious about the coming of Geo, but again, we'll see that when we see that. Other news. I'm still trying to get the stuff Toei took down from my YouTube page back up there. It is time-consuming. I am probably not going to get much of that done, as I'm trying to get Hibiki done this and next weekend, and I'm taking some overtime hours at work, so yeah, it's going to be a crowded bit. Hopefully most of those I'll be able to get back up in September. Otherwise, that's it for this week. I will see you all next time.